Hello everyone, this is Miss Berlin, and on this lecture video, we'll be discussing the ATP to ADP cycle. But first, let us define the ATP. When we talk about ATP, we mean to say the adenosine for A, P for tri, and then P for the phosphate. So ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. This is a molecule that stores and releases energy in cells, making it the primary energy source for biological system. So the ATP therefore powers cellular processes by releasing energy when a phosphate group is removed. And then we will be having when a phosphate group is removed, since we have a tri here, you will have the diphosphate, which has a lower energy compared to ATP. But before we delve on that, we will be discussing the structure of the ATP. The adenosine triphosphate has three main parts. We have the nitrogenous base, which is the adenine from the term adenosine, and then the ribose sugar, a pentose sugar, and then the three phosphate groups attached to the molecule. Here is the structure of that. Adenosine triphosphate again has a nitrogenous base composed of nitrogen, that's the presence in the carbon ring, and then a ribose sugar. You can tell that this is a ribose sugar because of the presence of the carbon ring, and this is the pentose sugar. We also have the three phosphate groups. Triphosphate means to say we have three phosphate groups attached on this molecule. You have 1, 2, 3. The P, capital P here, and the structure stands for the phosphate. Now, the ATP is being produced through cellular respiration, which breaks down food to create energy. It can also be produced without oxygen through anaerobic respiration, which occurs in plants, algae, and some bacteria. So again, these are the parts of adenosine triphosphate. You have the nitrogenous base, ribose sugar, and the three phosphate groups. This is the chemical formula for adenosine triphosphate. You have C10H16N5O13 and P3. Means to say you have. Now we will be discussing now the ATP to ADP cycle on this video. Here, ATP to ADP cycle, as you can see. Now, when we talk about ATP to ADP cycle, this is the process that involves the conversion of adenosine triphosphate. This is the adenosine triphosphate here. This is the adenine, the ribose sugar, and the three phosphate group. So when we talk about this is the conversion of ATP to adenosine diphosphate. So from ATP, you will have to ADP. As you can see, from tri to di. That is what we mean by the cycle. This cycle is a key part of how cells store and release energy. So how does ATP to ADP happens? ATP to ADP happens when a cell needs energy. So again, ATP to ADP happens when a cell needs energy. The ATP here, this is the ATP, right? It has three phosphate groups. The ATP breaks down into ADP when it releases the energy that the cells can use. So this process is similar to rechargeable battery, where ATP is the fully charged state and ADP is the rundown state. And to break down or to separate the phosphate, one phosphate, so that one phosphate can be used as a source of energy, an enzyme will occur or will be needed in the reaction, and that enzyme is ATP synthase. I'm writing it, synthase. Alright, so the enzyme ATP synthase is responsible for both breaking down ATP into ADP and converting ADP back into ATP. The concentration of each molecule depends on the body's current energy needs. So if the cell needs an energy, this one here, this 3-phosphate here, will be broken down by the ATP synthase. It will be broken down and the phosphate will be released, and on that process, on the breakdown process or breaking process, an energy is released for the cell. Now, since we have here one phosphate from the 3, you will now have the ADP. So from 3 to 2, that is what we mean di. Di means 2. ADP, diphosphate. So from 3 phosphate groups, you will now have 2 phosphate groups, and that is ADP. Now, it is a cycle. This one is a cycle because this needs to be replenished right? When I talk about cycle, which means this is a continuous process. And converting the ADP into ATP, it happens when a cell has a extra energy. So when that happens, it reattaches a phosphate group to ADP. So as you can see, there is a spare energy. So the energy is being absorbed from the food, of course. So if there is an excess energy from the food, the phosphate here that has been released on the cycle will reattach itself. It will reattach itself in the cycle from 2 plus 1. From 2 plus 1 here, 2 phosphate plus 1 phosphate, you will now have triphosphate, and that is the ATP. So I hope this clarifies the lesson. Thank you very much.